Girl, wash your face. Stop believing the lies about who you are so you can become who you were meant to be, by Rachel Hollis. Picture this, a 19-year-old woman standing alone in her cramped Hollywood apartment. Just 12 months earlier, she'd been absolutely certain about everything. She'd fallen for this guy. Older, sophisticated, charming, and with that reckless confidence that only teenagers possess, she'd decided he was definitely, without question, the one. Her real life was finally about to start. But wow, a year changes things. 12 months of feeling like she didn't matter. 12 months of accepting whatever tiny morsels of attention he tossed her way and pretending she was lucky to get them. 12 months of shrinking herself, hushing her voice, hiding her needs, desperately hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally notice her, truly notice her. Then, right before Thanksgiving, he pulled the plug. He wanted a clean break, he explained. They'd always be friends, he promised. She literally begged him to stay. He walked out anyway. The following night, after a holiday spent in absolute misery, she stood in that same apartment listening to his voicemail. He was checking in to see if she was doing okay, and right then, something clicked. An entire year of heartache and insecurity and self-doubt suddenly crystallized into one powerful, clear moment. She could see their whole relationship for what it actually was, not the epic romance she'd imagined, but a brutal lesson she'd needed to learn. She called him back, and with a calm that genuinely surprised her, she said, "I'm finished with this. I'm finished with you. Don't contact me again." She told him she deserved more, and for the first time in 12 months, she actually meant it. She hung up, powered down her phone, and for the first time in forever, she slept like a baby. Now, if this were a Hollywood movie, that's where we'd roll the credits. Our heroine discovers her strength and walks confidently into the sunset. But real life? It's messier than that. Because the very next morning, aggressive pounding on her door jolted her awake. And standing on the other side was that very same man, practically on his knees, begging for another shot. That man? He's been her husband for over a decade now, the father of her 4 kids. This isn't just some dramatic romance story. It's actually the beating heart of one of the most impactful books in recent years, Girl, Wash Your Face, by Rachel Hollis. This book has flown off shelves by the millions and sparked a worldwide movement, not because it promises magical solutions or quick fixes, but because it's built on one simple yet transformative truth, the same truth that young woman discovered in her Hollywood apartment all those years ago. By the time we're done here today, you're going to understand this truth. You're going to recognize the invisible lies that have been sabotaging you, and you're going to walk away with the secret that lets you take complete control of your own life and happiness, starting this very moment. Let's get real for a second. We're all living double lives. There's the polished version we show the world, and then there's what's actually happening when nobody's looking. On social media, Rachel Hollis's life looked flawless. She was running this successful lifestyle media company, posting gorgeous photos of perfectly styled cupcakes and glamorous shots from the Oscars. People constantly messaged her, gushing about how perfect everything must be, how she clearly had her entire life figured out. And her internal response? I literally just peed myself on a trampoline trying to impress my 3-year-old. That's not an exaggeration. That genuinely happened. And this is the foundation of Rachel Hollis's entire philosophy, the massive gap between the illusion of perfection and the messy, complicated, often mortifying reality of actual life. She realized that so many of us, women especially, are drowning in the belief that we're the only ones struggling. We scroll through everyone else's carefully curated highlight reels and feel like total failures, because our chaotic behind the scenes doesn't measure up. But Hollis showed up with a powerful truth, one she had to learn through years of hard experience. Here's how she puts it. You, and only you, are ultimately responsible for who you become and how happy you are. Sounds almost too simple, right? Like something you'd embroider on a throw pillow. But it's a truth we can't really absorb until we first recognize the lies standing in our way. She argues that our entire lives we've been feeding ourselves these stories. These lies. Lies telling us we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. Lies promising that someone else, the right partner, the perfect job, a specific number on the scale, will finally deliver happiness. These lies have been playing on repeat in our heads for so long that they've basically become background noise. We don't even register them anymore. But they're controlling our decisions, capping our potential, and robbing us of joy. The path to a better life, the one you're meant to live, starts with identifying and systematically dismantling every single one of those lies. One of the most widespread and damaging lies is this: something else will make me happy. When Hollis was a teenager, her home life was chaotic and painful. Her older brother, who was both her protector and best friend, took his own life when she was just 14. The tragedy completely shattered her already fragile family. Her constant thought became, someday I'll escape this place and then I'll finally be happy. So at 17, she graduated early and bolted to Los Angeles, convinced that a change of location would transform her entire life. And honestly, for a while it seemed to work. But gradually she learned one of life's toughest lessons. Moving is just geography. It doesn't transform who you are. It only changes what you see outside your window. You can be in the most stunning location on Earth and still be absolutely miserable if you haven't decided to be happy. Happiness isn't some destination you eventually reach. It's a choice you make every single day, regardless of what's happening around you. This brings us to another sneaky lie, possibly the one that crushes more dreams than any other. I'll start tomorrow. We've all done this dance. We announce that starting right now, we're going to wake up early, hit the gym, eat clean, write that novel, and then we don't. We fold faster than cheap lawn furniture in a storm. Hollis tells this story about working out late at night after a lengthy dinner with friends. Her friend texted her, genuinely confused, asking why she didn't just push it to the next day. Hollis's answer was straightforward and profound. Because I made a promise to myself and I don't break those. Not ever. Her friend's response? I'm the first person I break a promise to. Really sit with that for a moment. We bend over backwards to keep our word to our boss, our friends, our family, but we bail on ourselves without even blinking. Imagine having a friend who constantly flaked on you, who made plans and then canceled because a Netflix show was just too good to pause. Would you trust that friend? Would you count on them? Obviously not. Well, guess what? Your subconscious feels exactly the same way about you. When you repeatedly break promises to yourself, you're teaching yourself that you're unreliable. You're training yourself to quit. So when obstacles appear, when you hit a rough patch, your instinct, your deeply ingrained pattern, is to give up. So how do you flip this script? How do you become someone who actually keeps their word to themselves? Hollis says you start tiny. For her, it began with Diet Coke. She was completely addicted, downing several cans a day. She knew it was unhealthy, so she committed to giving it up for just 30 days. Sounds trivial, but she had a lifetime of quitting behind her. This time she asked herself one question: what if, just this once, I actually followed through? And she did. That first week was brutal, but she kept her word, and by month's end she didn't even want it anymore. That one small victory rewired something fundamental. It taught her subconscious a new lesson. When she set a goal, she achieved it. That tiny success became the foundation for bigger ones, like completing a half marathon and writing her first book. If you want to achieve your goals, you need to stop just talking about them and start building a track record of keeping promises to yourself, no matter how small. But what if the lie isn't about tomorrow? What if it's about right now? What if the lie whispers, "I'm not good enough"? This lie is insidious. For Hollis, it showed up as workaholism. She absolutely loved her job. It was where she excelled, where she felt competent and proud. Home, though? Home was chaos. Toddler meltdowns, teenage drama, and the constant feeling that she was failing as a mom. So she developed this habit of working and working and working some more. It felt like a choice between absolutely crushing it at the office or barely surviving at home. The choice seemed obvious, but there was more to it. It was rooted in a childhood where she learned that praise and attention only came when she accomplished something. In her young mind, love had to be earned. This belief stalked her into adulthood, creating this relentless compulsion to prove her worth through constant productivity. She couldn't sit still. The second she accomplished one goal, she was already thinking, "Okay, what's next?" She had no clue this was destroying her. She had no idea her work was seriously damaging her health, until her body literally forced her to pay attention. At 19, during that turbulent first year with Dave, the stress became so overwhelming that she developed Bell's palsy. Half her face was paralyzed. She couldn't close her eye, her speech was slurred, and she had to wear an eye patch. A few years later, while on a dream vacation in Europe, it happened again. The photo she'd always fantasized about, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, became a painful reminder of her condition. Both times, doctors told her it was caused by extreme stress. She was working 60-hour weeks and completely neglecting herself. Her body was literally shutting down to force the rest it desperately needed. Years later, the stress manifested as vertigo. The room would spin. She felt constantly dizzy and nauseated. After visiting countless doctors, a homeopathic practitioner finally gave her the diagnosis that transformed everything. He looked at her and explained that her vertigo was her body's physical response to an emotional crisis. His prescription? Go home and do nothing. The suggestion made her want to crawl out of her skin. For someone who believed her value was tied to her output, doing nothing felt like ceasing to exist. But she forced herself. She went home, planted herself on the couch, and discovered that, shockingly, the world didn't collapse without her running at full speed. She learned to rest. She learned to find joy in ordinary moments. She went to therapy and finally grasped this life-changing truth. She was loved, worthy, and enough, exactly as she was. You can't take care of anyone else until you first take care of yourself. You have to put yourself on your own priority list. This journey towards self-worth also means confronting another dangerous lie: I need to make myself smaller. Hollis shares how her father, a man whose love she desperately craved, would often use "little girl" not as a term of endearment, but as an insult. "Little girl, you have no clue what you're talking about." This taught her an impossible balancing act: be successful enough to earn his approval, but small enough not to be annoying. This contradiction haunted her for years. She built this massive media company, but would dismiss it at parties as just a little lifestyle blog. She was terrified to own her ambition, to talk about her success, worried it would make others uncomfortable. She realized she wasn't alone. She watched countless entrepreneurial women describe their businesses as hobbies or side projects. Even when they were pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars, they were all shrinking themselves to make everyone else feel more comfortable. Hollis asks this powerful question: do you honestly think you were created to deny your true self because it might bother other people? You weren't made to be small. Embracing your ambition, your dreams, and your power isn't arrogant. It's living the life you were designed for. Of course, the road to our dreams is never straight. It's littered with obstacles and rejection. And that's where we encounter the lie that stops so many people cold: no is the final answer. Hollis says she's basically an expert in rejection, but more importantly, she's an expert in refusing to let rejection end the story. She believes that when it comes to your dreams, no is not an answer, it's a detour. It's a signal to reassess, to find another route. If the front door's locked, try the side window. If the window won't budge, shimmy down the chimney. No simply means you need to adjust your approach. She tells this story about writing her first novel. A literary agent reached out, loved her concept, and declared, "I can sell this all day long." Hollis was over the moon. She wrote like a woman possessed, certain this was her breakthrough. She finished the book, and the agent sent it to every major publisher in New York. The responses were encouraging, but they all included the same note. The editor on the first call said, "Our concern is that it's too sweet." They wanted her to add steam, explicit content. This was at the peak of the 50 Shades of Grey craze, and every publisher was chasing that formula. But it wasn't the story she wanted to tell. Her heroine was innocent and naive, and that's what made her special. So she politely declined. The publisher's response was harsh. Nobody will buy it as is. One by one, every single publisher rejected it. She locked herself in the bathroom and ugly cried. But after the tears dried, she got up, poured herself a glass of wine, sat down at her laptop and Googled, "How do you self-publish a book?" She self-published that book, the one nobody wanted. To date, that single book has sold over 100,000 copies and launched her career as an author. The lesson is crystal clear. Nobody gets to tell you how big your dreams can be. They can talk all they want, but you get to decide whether you're going to listen. These lies don't just sabotage our careers, they deeply damage our relationships. One of the most heartbreaking lies is this one: loving him is enough for me. This is the lie that leads us to accept treatment we don't deserve, to silence our own needs in hopes of being loved. This is the lie Hollis lived during that agonizing first year with the man who would eventually become her husband, Dave. She was so deeply in love, so desperate for the relationship to succeed, that she rationalized everything. When he'd ignore her during the day but call her late at night, she went running. When his friends were rude to her and he said nothing, she made excuses. She accepted whatever scraps he offered and felt grateful to receive them. She became someone she didn't recognize, all in pursuit of his love. It took hitting absolute rock bottom, the breakup, the pain, that moment of clarity, for her to realize she had to be willing to walk away. She had to value herself more than she valued the relationship. It was only when she found the courage to say, "I'm done," that he realized what he was about to lose. Her story had a fairy tale ending, but she's quick to emphasize that this isn't typical. The real lesson isn't that he'll come back. The real lesson is that you'll be okay if he doesn't. As long as you allow someone to treat you poorly, they will. If you can't value yourself, nobody else will either. This journey of self-love and self-respect extends to every corner of our lives, including motherhood. So many women are haunted by the lie, "I'm not a good mom." Hollis shares this story about her 7-year-old son telling her she needed to get one of those monogram necklaces with her kids' initials on it. Why? So you can finally be like all the other moms. Those words absolutely crushed her, because she was already painfully aware of how different she was. She was the working mom in heels and a blazer at school events, surrounded by moms in athleisure. She was constantly juggling, constantly feeling inadequate, constantly comparing herself to some mythical other mom who probably grew her own organic cotton to sew her son's craft day shirt. She finally decided, I'm over it. She realized that trying to be a perfect mom is complete fiction, but being a pretty great mom, most of the time, is actually achievable. There's no single right way to be a mother. Your kids don't need a perfect mom, they need a happy one. They need a mom who gives herself grace, who models self-care, and who isn't constantly beating herself up for not being like everyone else. The best way to care for your children is to first care for yourself. Perhaps the hardest lies to overcome are the ones rooted in deep trauma, the ones that whisper, I'll never get past this. Hollis speaks with raw bravery about finding her brother's body after his suicide. She doesn't sugarcoat the horrific images burned into her memory, the years of nightmares, the paralyzing fear and guilt that followed. For years, she didn't think she could ever move through it. All she could see was blood and fear and loss. But she's still here. She explains that she survived by rewriting the narrative in her mind. She refused to let the trauma have the final word. Instead of letting the hard times weaken her, she willed them to strengthen her. When she was in her 51st hour of labor, exhausted and depleted, her internal monologue was, You were forged in a fire worse than this. You've stood with death, and you're certainly strong enough to help bring this life into the world. She makes this profound point. If you're going to blame your hardships for everything wrong in your life, you also have to credit them for the good stuff. The resilience, the strength, the empathy. All of it was forged in that fire. You can't ignore your pain, but you can find a way to embrace the good that emerged from it. Your trauma doesn't have to define your life. All of these lies about our worth, our dreams, our relationships, our past, ultimately lead us to one final, empowering truth. It's the truth Hollis discovered during her first half marathon. At mile 11, struggling and exhausted, she was listening to Bonnie Tyler's I Need a Hero on her iPod. And as she sang along, she had the biggest revelation of her adult life. She didn't need a hero. In that moment, pushing her body beyond limits she never imagined possible, she realized, I am my own hero. Nobody forced her to train. Nobody got the blisters for her. Nobody paid the entry fee. That was all her. And the achievements in your life, big and small, that have shaped who you are, those are all you. This is the ultimate message of the book. You have the power to change your life. God, your partner, your friends, none of them can do it for you. You have to stop waiting for someone else to fix it. Stop hiding. Stop being afraid. Stop making excuses. The final command is simple, yet revolutionary. It's a rallying cry for anyone who's ever felt stuck, unworthy, or lost. It's the moment you decide to rise up from where you've been, scrub away yesterday's tears and pain, and start fresh. It's the moment you look in the mirror and say, Girl, wash your face. What makes Girl, Wash Your Face such a phenomenon isn't that it presents groundbreaking new concepts. The power lies in its brutal, refreshing honesty. Rachel Hollis doesn't preach from some pedestal of perfection. She speaks from the messy, chaotic, utterly relatable trenches of real life. She pees her pants, she worries about her hairy toes, She argues with her husband, and she feels like she's failing as a mom. And by sharing that vulnerability, she gives all of us permission to be imperfect too. The most powerful lesson, the one woven through every story and chapter, is this profound call to personal responsibility. In a world that often encourages us to see ourselves as victims of circumstance, Hollis's message is a bracing and empowering alternative. She argues that while we can't control what happens to us, we're always in control of how we respond. Our past trauma, our childhood, our setbacks, they're part of our story, but they don't have to be our excuse. We can choose to be defined by our pain, or we can choose to be strengthened by it. This isn't about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps through sheer willpower alone. It's about a fundamental shift in perspective. It's about recognizing the narratives, the lies that we've accepted as truth, and making the conscious decision to write a new story. So how can you start applying this in your own life right now? First, identify one lie, just one. Pick one of the lies we've explored today that hits home for you. Is it, "I'll start tomorrow"? Is it, "I'm not good enough"? Write it down. Acknowledging the lie is the first step in stripping away its power. Second, make one promise to yourself and actually keep it. Start ridiculously small, just like Hollis did with the Diet Coke. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk after dinner. Honor that promise for 1 week. The goal isn't the action itself. The goal is building a new track record of self-trust. And third, be your own hero in one small way. Do something that scares you a little. Sign up for that class. Make that phone call you've been avoiding. Finish that project you abandoned. Prove to yourself, through action, that you're more capable than you believe. This book is a mirror. It forces us to examine the ways we hold ourselves back, the excuses we cling to, and the potential we're letting slip away. The journey it outlines isn't easy, but it's essential. It's the journey from believing the lies about who you are to finally, courageously, becoming who you were meant to be. That was a deep dive into the core ideas of Girl, Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. We've explored the highlights today, the powerful stories and life-changing principles. But here's the truth. A summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is discovered when you take the journey yourself. The genuine magic happens in those quiet reading moments, when a particular story or simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This podcast exists to help you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've discussed today has resonated with you, if you felt even a spark of recognition in these stories, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just an act of learning. It's an experience that can genuinely transform how you see yourself and the life you're capable of living. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a fresh perspective, please do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration of another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.